In today's lesson, we'll be learning how to transform a quadratic relation. Down below, you'll see a quadratic relation in vertex form. The a value here is -1, which means this parabola is going to be frowning or opening downwards. Take a look over here. This looks like +6, which means the original h value had to be -6 because two negatives become a positive. Therefore, the original h value was -6, which means a horizontal translation of 6 units to the left because this value is negative. And lastly, our k value is +2, which means a vertical translation of 2 units upwards since this is a positive value. If you recall, this is the parent function of a quadratic relation. Y equals x squared represents a parabola in its most simplest form before any transformations have occurred. Based on our information from before, we want to reflect our parabola across the x-axis. In other words, it needs to be opening downwards or frowning, and we need to move it 6 units left and 2 units up. Let's begin by reflecting it across the x-axis. Take a look at these images of Mr. Fantastic. I want you to imagine him flipping upside down. That should help you visualize what our newly transformed parabola looks like. Next, let's move our vertex 6 units left and 2 units upwards. I'm going to move a second point 6 units left and 2 units upwards. And I'm going to move a third point 6 units left and 2 units upwards again. And I'm going to do the exact same thing with the remaining 2 points. As you can see, our newly transformed parabola has been reflected across the x-axis. In other words, it is opening downwards or frowning. It has been moved 6 units to the left, and it has been moved 2 units upwards. In our second quadratic relation, our a value is -1, which means our parabola is going to be frowning or opening downwards. Our h value is +5, which means our parabola is horizontally translated 5 units to the right since this is a positive value. Take a look over here. This appears to be -3, which means our original k value had to be -3 since a plus and minus sign simplify to a minus sign, which means our original k value had to be -3. And this is a vertical translation of 3 units downwards since this is a negative value. Based on the information we just discovered, we are going to reflect this parabola across the x-axis. In other words, it's going to be opening downwards or frowning. We're going to move it 5 units to the right and 3 units downwards. Let's begin by reflecting our parabola across the x-axis. I want you to take a look at the images of Mr. Fantastic. Imagine him flipping upside down, and that should help you visualize the location of our new parabola, which is now frowning or opening downwards. Next, I'm going to move my vertex 5 units to the right and 3 units down. Let's repeat that process for a second point, and repeat that process yet again for a third point. I've gone ahead and moved my last 2 points 5 units to the right and 3 units down. As you can see, my newly transformed parabola has been reflected across the x-axis. In other words, it is opening downwards or frowning. It has been moved 5 units to the right and 3 units down.